So what you're looking at there is U.S. Central Command confirmed the use of unmanned surface vessels or sea drones against Iranian targets for the first time since the war with Iran began, striking a submarine and a ship maintenance facility as the U.S. tries to take control of the strait one more time. So Yasmin's got more details for us and facts for us as to what's happening here. And then we're going to discuss, is this it? Are we going in for a third factions segment part of this disastrous Iran war? And could this be larger than any of the other ones combined? So Yas, tell us about it.
Yeah, well, if it wasn't clear enough last week, the US has officially re-engaged in conflicts with Iran right now, but this time they are focusing specifically on the status of the Strait of Hormuz, and it gets a little bit complicated and confusing. So on Saturday, it was reported that a Cyprus-flagged container ship was struck by the IRGC as it traveled through the strait, and 23 crew members were stranded and one was missing there. The IRGC said in a statement carried by the state broadcaster IRIB that same day that its forces had struck the vessel because it had switched off its tracking systems and endangered maritime security. It claimed that it had fired a warning shot at the vessel, but that it did not change course. So the IRGC then announced that the Strait of Hormuz was once again closed to maritime traffic. And of course, the US was not very happy about all of this, and this is what reignited a lot of the fighting. So the reporting says that the US military earlier Sunday said it hit some 140 targets, including missile and drone launch sites, ammunition dumps, communication equipment, and other sites, a far heavier set of attacks than in 2 previous rounds of strikes in the last week. And at least one of those strikes hit civilian infrastructure as well. One attack struck a water pumping station in Mashhad County on the southern coast, killed the facility's security guard and wounded 4 others, according to Iran's state broadcaster IRIB. So now there's also indication of strikes from the United States, and they have now expanded beyond the coastal areas. So again, the reporting says that overnight, most US bombing was still concentrated in areas along Iran's southern coast, but one attack struck a military facility in Nain in central Iran, killing 1 person and wounding 7 others, the province's deputy governor told the Islamic-run Republic News Agency. So according to AP News, Iran then retaliated with strikes on areas that are hosting our military forces, including Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Jordan, and Oman. And these are countries whose territorial waters all make up the Strait of Iran. So they're all very geopolitically significant. And according to Reuters, Article 5 of the M.O.U. says that traffic of commercial vessels would start immediately and that Iran will begin making arrangements using its best efforts for the safe passage of commercial vessels with no charge for 60 days only from the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman and vice versa. And Tehran interprets this US recognition of Iran's right to manage the whole waterway, albeit without charging fees or tolls for 2 months. The United States and the Gulf states reject that interpretation regarding the language as meaning only that Iran should facilitate safe passage for vessels and not impose restrictions backed up by force. So now that Iran has declared that the strait is closed again after multiple ships sailed through unapproved routes, the United States, as you can imagine, is not very happy. This is what was posted by US Central Command. And you can see here, it says the claim is that the Iranian commander for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy recently said on state-owned media that no foreign vessels may pass through the Strait of Hormuz without being identified, tracked, and monitored by Iranian forces. But the fact is that Iran does not control the Strait of Hormuz. It remains an international waterway. US forces are positioned and prepared to keep it that way. And actually, Trump is saying that we do control the strait. Let's watch him say that.
We had a deal. What nobody knows, we had a deal. It was a done deal. And then they broke it. They always break it. We've had 10 deals with these people. And so we're just going to hit them very hard. And we're gonna keep the strait and we'll probably run it. We'll become the guardian of the strait. Maybe we'll call it the guardian angel of the strait. And we should be reimbursed for that. When we do that, we're going to be reimbursed because the other nations are very wealthy. They're on our side. And we can't be expected to do that for nothing, unlike we had for many years. You know, we guarded the strait for 50 years more, and we never got paid for it. They made all the money, and the United States was just, they wouldn't. It's amazing. It's we guarded it for nothing. And now we're going to guard it. We're going to get paid for guarding it. A lot of money.
And of course, he had more to say because he always has more to say. And in a Truth Social post this morning, he announced that the US will reimpose its blockade of Iranian ports and will impose fees on cargo. And you can see his Truth post here. It says the Hormuz Strait is open and will remain open with or without Iran. We are reinstating the Iranian blockade, so named because it is only stopping Iran ships or customers from entering or leaving. All other countries will have fair and open use of the strait. The USA will be from this point forward known as the guardian of the Hormuz Strait. No, we will not be known as that, but as such, and as a matter of fairness, will be reimbursed at the rate of 20% on all cargo shipped for any and all costs necessary to do the job of providing safety and security to this very volatile section of the world. The process information will begin immediately, he says.
How many of you guys are guilty of doom scrolling late at night on social media, looking at the news and then wondering why you can't fall asleep? Nothing pairs worse with trying to wind down than a bright screen lighting up your face and headlines playing on a loop in your head. Here's what's actually happening. The stress, the screen time, it all raises your core body temperature. And a body that's too warm can't get into deep sleep. Trust me, getting your sleep environment under control can change everything. Enter ChiliPad 2.0, the water-based mattress topper that actively controls your bed temperature from 55 to 115 degrees all night long. No new mattress, no renovation. It actively cools using just water. Fans only move hot air around. ChiliPad actually pulls heat away from your body. Precise, consistent comfort, and the new nightstand remote senses when you get into bed and kicks on automatically. Dual zones mean you and your partner each set your own temperature, no subscription needed. You get a 2-year warranty, and they're designed and assembled right here in the USA. Visit www.sleep.me/TYT to get up to $255 off your ChiliPad 2.0 with code TYT. That's www.sleep.me/TYT. Free shipping, free returns, and a 30-night trial so you can test it out, dream big, and wake up better. The headlines will still be there in the morning. You might as well wake up ready for them.
So just remember also that last month, Marco Rubio, he actually slammed these charging fees in the strait as illegal. What he said was no country is allowed to charge tolls or fees on an international waterway. That's existing international law. And he is the Secretary of State, so perhaps he knows a thing or two about this. Then again, Trump is the president, but he doesn't seem to know a whole lot about these things. But according to the US Joint Maritime Information Center, the blockade is going to go into effect tomorrow. And this is covering all of Iran's ports, oil terminals, and coastal areas. Also, the fees will be enforced for any vessel, regardless of country. And it says that any vessel suspected of entering or departing the blockaded area without authorization is subject to interception, diversion, and capture. Non-compliant vessels may be legally compelled with force. This is all from a statement. And the center said neutral transit through the Strait of Hormuz heading to or from non-Iranian destinations will not be impeded. So of course, Iran has responded to Trump's claims, and this is from DropSite. The statement is that Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya central headquarters, the joint operational command of Iran's armed forces that coordinates the military and the IRGC, issued a new warning rejecting any US role in the Strait of Hormuz. The headquarters spokesperson said that Iran will under no circumstances allow the United States to interfere in managing the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian forces will respond forcefully to any US military activity affecting commercial shipping outside routes designated by Iran. The Gulf states were also warned that providing logistical support to US forces would be considered an act of war against Iran's sovereignty and national security. And the statement said that if the conflict expands, The flames of war, that's a quote, could engulf the entire region and blame the US and its regional partners for any further escalation. Also, the IRGC's public relations office, they put out a statement as well. It said the only way to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to vessel traffic is for the aggressive US military to end its interventions in the strait and respect the sovereignty of countries over their own coastal waters. And they added the continuation of these interventions will lead to even greater disruptions affecting the global oil and gas sector. And by the way, Cenk, Brent crude oil prices rose more than 3% today. And we did see Trump address that at one point. He was talking to some people about oil and gas prices, and he was like, yeah, every time we hit Iran, the gas prices are gonna go up a little bit, and that's okay. He said that while he was talking about the affordability crisis, by the way, so that is kind of where his mind is at with all of this. But Cenk, this does sound a lot worse. It seems as though there has been no successful diplomacy, the peace talks, whatever. Like we're just going back to square one, and we're still fighting over the strait.
Yeah, so I can guarantee you what's going to happen next, and that comes from a guy who, for now months, have said I'm not really positive what's going to happen next because there's so many mixed signals. And Anna and I had some conversations and even slight debate over it. So I'll come back to that in a second. But now it's crystal clear because Trump is giving an address on Thursday night to the nation, and he apparently sent a letter to Congress we found out about right before we went live on air here, where he said the war is back on. And so he's sending a formal letter to Congress, and that gives him another 60-day window at least to conduct more aggressive war, apparently in his mind. But he doesn't really follow the law that much. So the fact that he sent that letter is an excellent indication that he thinks, yeah, we're done with the peace conversation. And in fact, you've seen him say that several times over the last couple of days. The peace deal is over, the war is back on. So this is not one of those conflicts that they were characterizing as, oh no, this is just a small little flare up, but we're right back into the peace talks and this is no big deal. No, the peace talks appear to be over now and we're back into war. So a lot of people in this country don't seem to understand what that means, including people in the media, people on Wall Street. I'll come back to that as well. But let me now explain why I think it's so definitive. So first off, Yaz read to you that statement from Marco Rubio earlier in the conflict saying, well, no one is allowed to charge a fee for going through the Strait of Hormuz, and it's a violation of international law. Now we're saying, oh, no, we didn't mean that at all. No, we think we now control the Strait of Hormuz, or we're the guardians of at least a portion of the galaxy that's the Strait of Hormuz, and we're gonna charge 20%. So we wouldn't say that unless we thought we have it and we have it for good, because then Iran can turn around and go, oh, okay, I guess the new rule is 20%, and that's what we're gonna charge going forward if we control the Strait of Hormuz. So the US and Trump are acting very, very confident. It's over, Iran doesn't have any more leverage. We control the Strait of Hormuz, and we have a obvious huge military advantage over them. And we're gonna continue to this war exactly as Israel has asked us to do, and they won't be able to do anything about it. Now, Iran, for their part, they also are super confident that they're able to control the Strait of Hormuz. Who's right? Well, we're gonna find out over the next couple of days and couple of weeks, because full-scale war is back. And what happens in that war? Everybody seems to be super confident. And by the way, I've seen people who are against Israel who are super confident that Iran is going to win the war. I don't know that at all, okay? So I can tell you what I know and what I don't know. Now it's absolutely definitive, the war is back on. Were the entire peace negotiations a ruse? Well, that's what Anna said throughout, and if you want to start, posting hashtag Anna was right, I hear you, right? I don't know if it was the entire thing was a ruse, or in the beginning, Trump and our side really thought we can't reopen the strait, we got to get to peace. And now they believe they can, or if the entire thing was a delaying process from the beginning. And given that we're going back into a complete war with Iran, there's excellent evidence to say that, yeah, the whole peace thing was a ruse, just like the Israelis. They claimed to do ceasefires, but never ever listened to any of them. And we were trying to trick them into delay and to waiting so we can go back to hitting them and killing them and doing whatever Israel commands us of us inside Iran. So given all this, Yaz, my sense of it is disaster is next. No matter who gains control over the strait, there's going to be a very large battle there, and certainly the ships are not going to want to pass it when there's a giant battle. And we're going to go back to oil being a problem. We're going to go back to inflation. We're going to go back to significant economic problems. And this time around, this is the most important part. We just burned the bridge behind us. That's it. There's no more negotiations. Iran is never going to get tricked back into the negotiation table. They know, or at least certainly from their perspective, that we never listen to peace deals. We never mean it when we're negotiating for peace. We never listen to ceasefires. We're just like the Israelis, at least under the Trump administration, and we're not to be trusted. So it's full war from here till someone wins. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned a little bit, he really is not concerned about gas prices going up at all. And he has communicated as much to the American people. And I know that it sounds insignificant to complain about an American affordability crisis and gas prices going up when people in other countries are literally dying and being killed and being bombed and their infrastructures and their history is being destroyed. But the affordability crisis is what is real and present and current for the American people. And so when our president says, I'm going to continue to do things deliberately that I know is going to make life so much more difficult for my constituents, for the people that I'm actually supposed to be representing, that is going to be a huge problem, not just for Trump, but for the Republicans heading into the midterms. All the ones who are supporting this, hopefully that comes back to bite them in the where come midterms. And also what stood out to me, Cenk, was when Trump was saying that, those Iranians, they always break their deals, they always break their promises, because this reminds me of how this all started in the first place. And we remember that we had an Iran nuclear deal that was in place. It was done under the Obama administration. And one of the first things that Trump did when he came into office in 2017, I believe, was he pulled us out of the Iran nuclear deal. And a lot of the reason why he did that was presumably because Israel wanted him to do that, because they now have a reason to fight with Iran. They now have a reason to do more imperialism in the Middle East, and they have a reason to utilize the United States military against Iran. And I did agree with Anna when she was saying that the peace talks were a ruse, because they never felt real. They always felt like something like, we have to show that we're pretending to do diplomacy. We have to show the people that, look, we tried, right? And that is exactly what's happening right now. They're saying, look, we tried the peace talks. They didn't work. We did everything we could. So now we have no choice but to just do more bombing and more death and destruction, even though that demonstrably just can continue to go on and on and on for years, and nothing will be accomplished, right? We as a people are familiar enough by now, or we should be, with these long haul conflicts that we seem to always get ourselves into, particularly in the Middle East, right? And you could also look at Ukraine. These things go on for years, and people's entire lives are being disrupted the entire time it's happening. We here in the United States, we have an affordability crisis, but people over there, imagine your high school career, right? Imagine all of high school, your 4 years of your life, and it's just bombing, and you have to live through that. It is very, very disruptive. It's very destructive, but they're like, you know what? We have to keep trying the bombing part. We don't have to keep trying the peace part, the peace talks part. We're just gonna do that once or twice, but then we're gonna go back to bombing because that's what they really wanna do.
Yeah, my last points on this are, guys, this is not a little thing. This is the mother lode. We're now past the tipping point. The consequences of the full-scale war that's coming next will be global. They will be historic, and it will lead to a string of ramifications that the people in charge right now in America and Israel don't understand. So the ramifications will be disastrous in the beginning for the world economy, all the people's lives who are lost in that region. But later, my guess, based on analyzing the news, is that there will be significant consequences for the entire region, including Israel. They think that they are above the law. They think that they will never be harmed, that they could just kill, attack all of their neighbors and order America around and force us into one war after another, all of them ending in disaster for us. My guess is after we're past the tipping point, which is as soon as this war restarts, that's it. The dominoes will fall and the ramifications will last years. And eventually, my guess is, and this is a bold prediction and saying it on day one of the reemergence of the third section of the Iran war, that eventually will lead us to cutting off our alliance with Israel entirely. And a rage in this country about how Israel has controlled us that is hard to describe now. So what the people in power are doing is they're poking the bear. The bear is the American people. And the reaction they're gonna get back eventually is going to be significant. No matter what anybody says or what anybody does, it's over. The dominoes are going to fall. And in the beginning, it'll be super rough for the American people. We will pay a very heavy price for what Israel has gotten us to do in this war. And so I hate it. I don't want it at all. That's why we tried so hard to prevent it. But now it's locked in. So buckle up and brace for impact. Us first, the world first, that region first, but then eventually Israel. Because this amount of deception, this amount of warfare, this amount of abusing the American people are not going to be tolerated any longer. So now it begins. We'll see where it ends, and I'm not sure anyone knows that. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.